Alright you guys, so today I'm going to do a demo for you on making ginger cookies. And some of the things I really want you to pay attention to are the things we talk about for staying safe and staying sanitary, and of course, measuring and preparing all of our ingredients. Because every lab that we do, I'm going to be watching to make sure that you're measuring things out properly so that your food basically just tastes good for you. Now, before anybody does anything in the kitchen, there are two things that people need to do. Any guesses what one of those things is? Good. So one of them, we need to get our aprons on. You guys will find out your kitchen color in a little bit. And once you find out what kitchen color you're in, that's the color apron you should wear. And the second thing that everybody needs to do is we have to wash our hands. So let's go talk about how we want to wash our hands really, really well. So when we wash our hands, we need to make sure that we use hot water. That'll help to kill the germs. And of course, between hand soap and dish soap, we want to use hand soap. A lot of people, they like to scrub up, get the back of their palms. Oh, I'm done. But there are 3 spots that germs like to hang out on our hands. Does anybody know one of them? Good. So in between our fingers, make sure to get the palm, or in between your thumbs. And then we want to get underneath our nails. I always say soap up your palms of your hands and then kind of scratch like they really itch. Again, don't forget to get your thumbs. And if you're a jewelry wearer like I am, just slide up your jewelry, wash underneath. If you want to take them off, you can. But for me, once I take them off, I forget to put them back on. And then we'll just kind of go down our wrist a little bit. And then to turn off our water, it's a little bit awkward, but use your elbow. Why do we want to use our elbow to turn off the faucet? So our faucet is one of the dirtiest spots of the kitchen because all of us, when we're going to wash our hands, we just turn it on with our grubby little dirty hands. And so now this part is full of bacteria. So if we use our elbow to turn it off, very rarely are we ever going to be cooking with our elbows, so we don't have to worry about getting those germs in there. So when we dry our hands, make sure to use paper towel. Yours in your kitchen is going to be that dark brown. And don't use your dish towel. This is just going to be used to dry your dishes. If we use it to dry off our hands and we didn't quite wash our hands that well, all the germs are now on this towel. So when we go to dry off our clean dishes, any germs or bacteria that was on our hand is now on our dishes. With the paper towel, if we have a couple bacteria on here, it just goes right in the garbage anyway. So the 2 things everybody has to do, wear their apron and wash their hands. And if you have long enough hair, so it's pretty much past your ears or right where your chin is at, you have to put your hair back. Yes, even if you're a guy and you have long enough hair, your hair goes back in a ponytail. Try to do kind of a messy bun or put it up high. We don't want the hair hanging low because it can swing over your shoulder. I've actually had it where a girl was leaning over their KitchenAid checking on the cookie dough and her hair got caught up in the mix-aid and we had to cut it out. So if she would have had it up in a messy bun, that never would have happened. Now that I have my apron on, my hair is up in a ponytail, and I washed my hands, since I'm baking cookies and using the oven, I need to make sure to preheat my oven. Anytime you are using an oven, that should be the very first thing you do. Let's go see how we preheat the ovens in our classroom. To preheat the oven, you're going to press oven temp, then move the arrows to what you need, and stop pressing buttons. It'll drop down to about 75, which is the internal temp, and work its way up. Okay, so my demo is going to look a little different than the things that you guys have in your kitchens, because if you couldn't tell, I'm doing it at home. But all of these ingredients will be on the orange table that if you guys turn around in the back of the classroom, you can see. For you guys, in your kitchens, underneath the cutting board, you all have yellow trays. Ironically, except for the yellow kitchen. So if you're in the yellow kitchen, you're going to look for one of those brown salad trays like you get at the hot lunch line. But that tray you will use to put all of the measuring ingredients, all of the bowls, the cups, anything like that that you're going to need to get the ingredients from that orange table back to your kitchen. So with our ginger cream cookies, the very first thing we need is a little bit of sugar. So to measure out our sugar, I'm going to use a measuring cup that looks like this, and this is called a dry measuring cup. When we are using a dry measuring cup, about 98% of the time, remember these three words: scoop, heap, and scrape. To scrape, I'm using this tool. Does anybody know what this tool is called? So this is our straight edge. When we are using a straight edge, it is very important that you scrape with it perpendicular to the edge of the cup, and you go straight across like this. If we don't do that, I'm going to get a nice heat going here, and I'll show you what will happen. Don't worry, my hands are clean, so it's okay. It's in the sugar bowl. But if I put the straight edge so that it's flat across it, when I go over, we can see that there's still a lot of extra sugar, so I wouldn't be getting a very accurate 1 cup dry measuring cup. So I have put my sugar into my mixing bowl right here, and every good cookie's got a little bit of fat, and so for our fat, we're going to use some shortening. Now, I also need 1 cup of shortening, but I don't want to use this dry measuring cup just because later down the line, I'm going to need to use it to measure out my flour. So, lucky for me, I have a second one. Anytime we do something that has a consistency of shortening, so shortening, peanut butter, ice cream, it would be really hard to scoop it in there. 1, because this opening is just not very big. And 2, if I scooped, I wouldn't get shortening all the way down at the bottom of my cup. So I just need to bring over a spoon. And your hands might get a little messy here, but that's what cooking's all about. I like to hold my dry measuring cup down at the bottom so I don't break off my handle. I'm just going to spoon it in and pack it or push it down as I go. We're almost there. And just like with the sugar, I still want to get a heap. And there's a real good heap going on there. Now, what's the next step that I want to do? Good, I want to scrape it or level it off. I don't want to use my straight edge though again because I'm going to need it to measure the rest of these ingredients out. So, I'm just going to use a little butter knife and I'm going to use the back of it and go straight across. And I can see I didn't quite pack it well enough. So I'm just going to use my knife to pack it in a little bit better and then scrape it off again. And now we're just going to dump this in with our sugar. And use your hands, that's why we wash them. And like I said before, cooking gets messy, that's why it's so much fun. I'll just plop that back in. I cleaned my table off too. And since I have my apron, instead of going back to clean off my hands, I can just brush it right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something called creaming together my fat and my sugar. And basically what that means, we're just going to mix it together. I'm going to also use this tool. Any guesses what this is called? A rubber scraper. Did anybody call this a spatula? I know a couple of you did. We'll talk a little bit later about why this is not a spatula and why this is a rubber scraper. But I'm going to use it right now. As hopefully you can see I've got some shortening that's stuck there. I'm just going to scrape it and plop it in the middle of my bowl. Anytime you are using a mixer, whether it's a handheld one like this or a KitchenAid like in our kitchens, always start off slow and work your way up. So we can see here, I've got some of my sugar mixed in. I've got a lot of my shortening stuck in my mix attachments. So again, I'm going to use my rubber scraper and just kind of clean it out. But with this creaming, basically what I'm doing is I just want to make sure that all my sugar is mixed in with my shortening. If I missed this step, what would happen is my cookies would get really grainy, or when I bit into them, it would kind of taste like a little bit like sand. Any guesses why if we didn't cream together our sugar and our fat, we'd have those grainy cookies? Good. When fat gets heated up, what does it do? It melts and turns into a liquid. What happens when we dump sugar into a liquid? It dissolves. So by coating all of our fat with that sugar, once these go into the oven, that fat's going to melt really nicely, and the sugar is going to dissolve and kind of spread throughout everything. So now, with the help of my mix aid and a little muscle work with my rubber scraper, my fat and my sugar are well combined. So it's time to start adding some liquids in here, which are called binding agents, which means that these liquids are going to help to hold all of my dry ingredients together. So the first liquid I need is 1 egg. And I do not want to crack my egg right into my mixing bowl. Why do I not want to do that? 1, this shell and our shortening are about the same color. So it'd be really hard for me to see if there's a shell, and it'd be hard to pick it out. Then if we had a bad egg, so this was kind of bloody, or if we have farm fresh eggs, it was actually a chicken here, that would completely ruin the sugar and the shortening. I'd have to dump everything out, wash it, and restart over. But if I crack it into this little bowl, which is called a custard cup, I can very easily look and see that I have 0 shells, there's 0 red in here, and then another thing, I only have 1 yolk. I have 1 of those yellow things in there. If we were making scrambled eggs, getting a double yolk would be a bonus, but since this is baking, it's actually chemistry and you're doing pretty complicated science in here, so just that little bit of extra liquid that would come from the second yolk would completely ruin our cookie dough. Now, I've touched raw egg, so it's super important for me to go back and wash my hands really, really well. As I'm washing my hands, I want you guys to try to think back to how we should wash our hands. So I just washed my hands because I touched that raw egg, and we never know if a raw egg has salmonella, and salmonella is a foodborne illness that can get us really, really sick. It's like having the flu and diarrhea at the same time. Not pleasant, really gross. That's why I wanted to wash my hands. So my raw egg is in my cookie dough, and now I'm going to add my second liquid, which is some molasses. And I need 2 tablespoons of that. Anytime you are measuring a liquid, do not measure it over the bowl, because if I accidentally pour too much, that's really going to change the flavor. So I've said it many times, cooking is messy. Just do it right over the table. So I have 1 tablespoon. Slow as molasses, that's where that saying comes from. Now I'm going to get my second tablespoon. And for me, since I don't have far to travel with this tablespoon, I just measure it out and dump it in my bowl. But when you guys are at the ingredient table, please bring over either a custard cup or another small bowl anytime you're using a measuring spoon. Just because if I were in the black kitchen and I were measuring out that molasses and trying to set the tablespoon down on my yellow tray, get all my other ingredients, pick up that yellow tray, and walk back to the black kitchen, chances of me having a full tablespoon of molasses in there by the time I reach my kitchen, slim to none. But if I dump it into the custard cup and you don't have a full tablespoon by the time you get to your black kitchen, we've probably got bigger issues on our hands here. So this is what our dough currently looks like. Now I'm going to mix it up again, and it's going to become a really nice brown color. And here's our dough now.